Both West Ham and Chelsea are coming off opening day draws as they come to the London Stadium to look to open up the win column for both sides this weekend at the London Stadium. I hope you are all well. This is the match preview for what is our first London derby of the season. We welcome Chelsea to the London Stadium, where it's highly anticipated with Chelsea, a bit of an unknown prospect this year, as well as the West Ham side that, well, we don't know what we're going to get equally as well. So it should prove to be an interesting encounter. Sky have certainly thought that, because we're on 4:30 on a Sunday, so we're the main event, which is interesting, and let's hope it's a good game to show for it as well. I'm delighted to say that Steve, who's a Chelsea fan, is going to give us some insight on what the hell is going on at Stamford Bridge. Steve, how are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, evening, Jake. Yeah, good, all good. You?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. So let's see who we've got watching before we carry on. Phil, I hope you are well. Happy Hammerat as well. Kenzie, thank you very much indeed for joining us as well. I hope everyone watching is well. Now we're going to park the Paqueta stuff for just a second. We'll get onto that a little bit later. But firstly, Steve, I want to ask you. You know, Chelsea have been in the press a lot again this summer because of the amount of money that you've spent yet again. 2 new midfield replacements in just this week in Caicedo and Lavia. And can you see a good side that your new manager Pochettino is trying to build after, do you say it was a car crash last year?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a car crash last year, and the change of personnel this year is phenomenal, really. Because I was just looking at the projected Chelsea team, and I think there might be two names I recognise, or perhaps 3. There's Sterling and Gallagher and Thiago Silva, and that's really the only 3 that are recognisable. The others are all unknown quantities, and to be honest with you, after 1 week's game training, whatever you want to call it, don't know. It's an interesting one. I mean, you know, West Ham aren't great at London derbies, I will have to say. If you look back over the history, they actually don't like London derbies. Perhaps you should have moved the stadium a bit further out to Essex or something, and then it wouldn't have been a London derby. And to have one quite early in the season would be interesting. I mean, I think Chelsea aren't going to click yet, I don't think, because there's too many new faces. I think it'll take a little while.
I think a few sides have had that issue where I certainly saw an improvement last Sunday against Liverpool. I don't know about you. I thought Chelsea were better than anything we saw last year. But I think you're right to an extent that it will take time for these players, because it's just been a complete dump of new players here, and expecting all these players that have probably never met each other before to come in and click just like that in the first couple of weeks is probably a little bit unrealistic.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I mean, I think I've said it for a little while. I'm not a big fan of this transfer window nonsense, because I think A, it goes on too long, and B, it's all rushed, and it's just everything seems to be the last minute because clubs hold out for one another, and then you start playing games, and all of a sudden you're playing somebody who was playing for somebody else 2 weeks ago, and it's difficult. And they say that this is how it's got to be, but. I honestly don't know. I mean, we've chosen some interesting signings. I will say that half of them I can't pronounce. I'll give you that. But then I'm a West Country yokel, so you're not expecting me to pronounce anything with a Z in it for a start, are you? So, or even a Y possibly. But it's an interesting. I sort of have a bit more faith in Pochettino than any of our last few managers. Certainly going back as far as Tuchel. And I wasn't that impressed. As you probably remember, I came on and said I wasn't that impressed with Tuchel when he came. But Pochettino seems to have got the governors under control. He seems to have got Todd and his crew a little bit more under control than just let's go out and buy 75,000 players because 3 of them are bound to be good. At least they seem to be buying, more astutely and more in line with what the manager wants.
Yeah, I think when it was announced that Pochettino would be coming back to London and going to Chelsea, of course, a few Spurs fans voiced their anger, but I sort of thought there's going to be a bit of stability back at Chelsea. Pochettino, a very good manager, who nearly did the unthinkable and won Spurs a trophy. He didn't quite get there, but he's a solid manager who has got who has got some very good experience. So I think who will get Chelsea to where they need to be, but it's just whether the owner and with the track record with managers, whether the patience and the time is given to him, because as we said, I don't think it will just click like that.
No, and I think the thing is, when Pochettino was at Spurs, and I think most Spurs players or most Spurs fans would agree with this, is that he moulded a good team, but wasn't given an awful lot of money.
Mm.
Good old Daniel Levy kept his hands on the checkbook fairly well. But it seems that now he can start to mould a team in his own image, if you want to call it that. And, ever hopeful. But we still have a fairly long injury list, including Reece James, who's just gone on it for the 17th time this season, and we're only a week in. So until we can we won't know what our first team is, I don't think, until we get into probably, I don't know, November. Because by the time all the players that are injured come back, and then they have a go and probably get injured again, we'll begin to know where we stand.
And I think, Reece James announced club captain a couple of weeks ago, and then it's taken a week for him to get injured. That was always going to be my fear with him becoming club captain. And very, very good player, but also spends at least half of every season on the injury table. And do you think that's sort of a big blow, just in the sense of that's a club captain gone for a month at least with a hamstring injury, which once again sort of rustles and unsettles the bunch?
I think we can't overdo the captaincy bit, I don't think, because I think last year we had probably about 7 captains last year, didn't we? So and I think some clubs need a club captain more than others, and I think Reece being only there for one game, going out injured, is not going to have such an effect as if it was somebody like Noble when he went out injured, because he was sort of so ingrained in the team, and the team worked around him. Whereas Reece has not been able to, because of his injury career, to really sort of establish him. I mean, he is established, don't get me wrong, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised we didn't sell him, because we seem to have sold everybody else that was half decent, or at least quite a few are half decent, and quite a few we shouldn't have bought in the first place. But I was glad to see him sort of being rewarded for a bit of loyalty, if you know what I mean, and not wanting to rush off anywhere else. Right from the beginning of the transfer window, I did not understand the Mason Mount situation and the money they got for him. I thought the money they got for him was ridiculously cheap compared to what they paid for players who are, should we say, equally as good.
No, I think from the outside looking in, I thought that was an all over strange situation and strange transfer to go through. Will he have a good impact there? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. The whole move sort of bemused me to an extent with it, and I'm sure it left both sides of both sets of fans equally confused with it. Let's take some comments. Happy Hammer says Sunday is going to be a tough watch. I'm praying we replicate December the 4th home game from 2 seasons ago. At home against Chelsea in the last couple of years, we've got a relatively good record. I think from memory, last year it was a 1-1 draw. Coincidentally, both sides on the opening day this season drew 1-1. So I'd take that if you were going to give it to me now. And of course, 2 years ago, as Happy Amrit says, that was the Arthur Masuaku, let's have a cross, but shot who made Mendy look like a bit of a fool, and it was 3-2, and that was sort of prime West Ham, a massive. We were absolutely on cloud 9 at that point. So in the last couple of years at home, we seem to have a good record. Let's not even talk about when we go to Stamford Bridge, VAR. We'll leave that for another day. But Chelsea, we always seem to have a good game, especially at home against Chelsea, and hopefully with a couple of new additions. So Chelsea got some new additions. We're expecting to see a completely different midfield to what we saw last week away to Bournemouth. With James Ward-Prowse, we're hoping to come into the side, and Edson Alvarez, a bit of an unknown quantity in terms of him in the Premier League. But you know what you're going to get from James Ward-Prowse? It's going to be solid. It's going to sort of maybe fill a couple of holes that we've had in that midfield. And then whatever's going to go on with Paqueta is going to go on. It's completely out of our hands now. if he's been betting, he's been a silly boy. If he hasn't, he's been wrongly accused. Then, as he is currently reporting, as we hear, then it's a pretty devastating sort of thing to be branded on him if it's not true. So that's once again one thing that's completely out of our control. Will Paqueta play on Sunday with these sort of allegations looming over him? I've got absolutely no idea. But let's hope it doesn't unsettle the bunch too much in that extent. Feels there's an important thing for Chelsea to find the best spine for their team and to find the best players, Steve, that, as you said, work together and can form a bit of a partnership, which currently will be lacking.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was, a 1-1 drawback against Liverpool. Actually, if you put it in context for how we've got on over the last couple of years, last week was encouraging.
Good result,
because last season we would have capitulated and probably gone down 3-0. I know Liverpool aren't quite the team they were 2 years ago, and they're in a little bit of process of rebuilding. It'd be interesting to see how Mr. Klopp does now that pressure's a little bit on him. But as far as a start to the season, it wasn't devastating. It was okay. It was a point, which was more than I was sort of expecting, because with that, as I said before, that many new players, to get any sort of rhythm going would be quite amazing. And I thought they looked quite good. Good to see Ben Chilwell back. He's looking good this season. And the goalkeeper situation, I think we got about 4 goalkeepers and only one of them's fit. So I don't think Sanchez expected to come in and start the first Premiership game of the season. And it goes back to this. If you've got James Ward-Prowse and you've got somebody in the middle of the box, then you've got a chance. Yeah. I'm not sure that you have yet the best person in the middle of the box to benefit from James Ward-Prowse.
Yeah, I think we've been notorious for our set pieces over the last couple of years, and Dawson was a big part of getting his nut on it. Zuma, Canan, and again, they are 2 big centre halves. Don't get me wrong, and Souček in there as well. We'll try and put his up there, but when the Maguire links were still alive, that was perfect, and I could actually see what we were going to do. We were going to buy Ward-Prowse to put the ball in. We were going to buy Maguire to be in the middle just to head it in, and we were ready to go. Of course, that deal's fallen through now, but yeah. As long as we've got a head in the middle to head it, then I think that could bail us out in many a game this year. The one thing with Chelsea, though, is you always seem to spend so much money, but you always seem to, is it forget or just fail to sign a natural number 9, a natural striker to sort of piece it all together. I mean, I know you started that Jackson, that young lad, last week, but there just never seems to be a proper sign that's going to work as a number 9 and a leading man that can sort of create a backbone for this side to sort of cash in the final third, as it were.
I mean, natural number 9s are a bit like hen's teeth. They are quite rare, and because we didn't have a great season, because we're not in Europe, it's possibly been more difficult to sign a good number 9 this season. All I can say is I think some of the the Jackson lad and the other signings we've got, there's more of a focus coming on to the who's up front. Sterling's in his first game seemed to play a bit better than he did last season, and if Chilwell and all the rest of them join in, we could be all right, certainly. And I wouldn't be surprised to see us sign a proper striker, if you like. I mean, I heard today that they're even interested in the guy from Nottingham Forest that you were interested in as well,
Ryan Johnson.
Yeah, that'll be interesting because he's basically an out-and-out left winger, isn't he? So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. I think Pochettino's got an idea what he wants, but he can't necessarily find it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And with Pochettino there, I think you're always guaranteed, as I said earlier, just a bit more stability than you've probably had in the last few years, which have got you in this mess. And I think if there was a manager in the world out there, sort of available, then I think Pochettino is probably one of the best options to go for, and it would not surprise me at all. You'll be nowhere near where you were last year, I don't believe. No. And I think you will be fighting once again, no doubt, for those European places, and that's where you want to be. That's where Chelsea I won't say needs to be because I don't like you that much. But but stereotypically that's where Chelsea have to be for the big six, and everything
Yeah,
else
I
that's
think
where you want to be.
the other thing, Jake, is that Pochettino is an interesting choice because having been out of football for I don't know how many years, but certainly a couple of years, he's probably got a hunger that some of the other managers we've had haven't got. He wants to prove Spurs wrong almost, and some of the other clubs he went to after he left Spurs, that he can cut the mustard.
Yeah.
And I think with a following wind and a fair season, we could be there or thereabouts. But it's interesting that they used to talk about the big four clubs, and it was Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Man City, Liverpool. We've now got extra other clubs, Newcastle coming in, and it's really about a big eight now almost. It's 8 teams that are fighting for 4 places in the Champions League, which has got to be good for the Premier League generally, and it's got to be good for clubs because there's a bit more. I think we probably got a slightly better chance than a lot of teams because we haven't got anything else. We've just got to play league football.
Yeah,
great.
I've said that from the start that there are many teams that will be pushing for those European spaces that are fighting on lots of fronts. People are saying that the likes of Brighton will be up there again. I'm not so sure. We've seen it firsthand at West Ham that when you've got a squad that's probably not to the level that it needs to be, playing Thursday, Sunday for a size of a club like West Ham, like Brighton, it becomes incredibly difficult. So the likes of Villa, the likes of Brighton, and maybe even to an extent Newcastle, who I think will be up there, but probably not as high as they were last year, in my opinion, because they're fighting with Europe as well. And Chelsea and Tottenham have that luxury where they're just focusing on the Premier League. And, maybe that'll give added incentive to go for the Cup, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, but that's nowhere near as, that's nowhere near as many games or as much focus on having to play every other week on a Wednesday or a Thursday night in the Champions League or Europa League or whatever. So that's, again, as you said, another thing that sort of plays into Chelsea's hands that with other clubs have to contend with. I'm going to just take some comments, see what you guys are saying. Frema says, Chelsea don't scare me, we'll be up for that one. I'm sure maybe steal a point, it will be fine. Cornet gets his revenge on Sunday, of course, after being wrongly penalised when we went to Stamford Bridge last year. Don't shake your head, Steve. Don't shake your head.
Sorry, I'm a referee. The referee's always right.
Happy Amaret says there is a little display to congratulate the team for the cup win before the game. Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm too much of a fan of that, to be honest. I think that ship's probably sailed for. I've had reports that we might be doing a lap round with a trophy. I'm not a huge fan of that. It's been and gone now. We've got a Premier League campaign to be worrying about. We had our parade, we had everything else. So I'm not a huge fan of that, but it is what it is. James Ward-Prowse on the score sheet. Let's hope so. Let's hope he gets the ground running because we've had many signings over the last few years that have taken 2 months to bed in. They've got to bed in. They've got to associate themselves with things. There shouldn't be any excuses. Get James Ward-Prowse in there. Get him whipping balls in and get him scoring goals for me. James Ward-Prowse is going to hit the ground running. Not sure about Edson Alvarez though. Good luck on Sunday, Hannah. Difficult one for us on Sunday. Kilmarnock on a plastic pitch. Well, there we go. Thank you very much, Andy. A plastic pitch, lovely.
I'm pretty certain he means a 4th generation synthetic turf.
Very nice terminology. Liverpool's midfield was worse than ours. Chelsea looks decent. Blue Star FC says, Jake, when our owners came in, they made the mistake. Only now they're getting it right. The first window was shocking. I think this Todd Bowley bloke came in and went, oh, I've got loads of money. I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to scattergun everything and sign anybody that looks half decent. And it did completely fail.
Just on that, I was reading a very interesting article about why Chelsea haven't fallen foul of the financial fair play or the FIFA fair play or the fair play regulations anyway. Yeah. And it turns out that because we're signing players on an 8-year contract, which seems to be the standard, that can now be put into the account. So if we sign somebody for, I don't know, 80 million, that's only 10 million a year on an 8-year contract. So therefore, there's only 10 million in the books for that player. If you sign them on a 1-2 year contract, or even a 3-year contract, a third of the value goes into the accounts for that year. And if you sell the player halfway through the 8 years or something, you actually gain because his value's gone down in the books, but you get more money than he's worth. So therefore, you get more money coming in. And the other thing is, if you sell any, like we've sold Hall to Newcastle today, I believe, because he's an academy player, if we got, I don't know what the fee was, I can't remember what the fee was, if we got 30 million for him, that's pure profit because he's an academy player. And it's really interesting how, you've got two Americans coming running the place who have got some very clever accountants, because American accountants obviously are much more used to, should we say, bending the rules. And they've analysed it, and that's really why I think Todd has spent so much money, and B, why he's getting away with it, because we've got these new super long-term contracts. I mean, if can you imagine somebody come up to you and say, "Well, I'll sign you for 80 million, and we'll give you an 8-year contract"? Yeah, I'll go for that.
Yeah, Simon Jordan did a sort of explanation piece of it, actually saying that Chelsea are 60 million clear of any sort of financial fair play sort of issues, and from the outside looking in, the way we looked at it, and to be fair, I actually worked it out last week, and I did write it down somewhere. It was quite baffling, really, that I worked out just purely on transfer fees that Chelsea have paid. I have got the number. Chelsea spent well over £2.3 billion on players in the last 10 years. But because of the way that it works out, and because of contracts and everything else, it gets pulled back, and they are quite sort of quite good about it. And we're currently under financial fair play restrictions, but over the last 10 years, we've only spent £800 million. Chelsea have spent 2.3 billion, but we've spent 820 million. But we're the ones that are getting sort of caught up for it, and that's the little loopholes that clubs find a way around, unfortunately.
Yeah, and when you think about it, it is clever. And Man City have got into trouble as well, and a lot of the big clubs have just not managed it properly. And I mean, you get some fairly sort of small clubs like Reading and teams like that, they've all got into trouble with financial fair play. And I'm not saying they can offer 8-year contracts. I'm not saying they should be offering 8-year contracts, but it is an interesting American. And if I heard at one point that you might be going down the American road. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but it'll be interesting to see what happens then, and whether your diehard supporters would be as keen on that as we're not keen on it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so. No, I get it. We will move on to some predictions now. I always like to stick to the prediction that I've given, and I can't see this. Of course, I would like to see West Ham win, but I can't see it to an extent. I'll go first, and my prediction is 2-2. I think it'll be a draw again. I think there will be goals in it. I think both sides will be up for it. London derby, we always seem to give Chelsea a very decent and close game, especially at home, as I said earlier. So I'm going to go 2-2. Desmond, an exciting game to round off a weekend's Premier League action. Steve, what would you go for if I had to?
I would probably go 2-1. Obviously to us, but so.
West Ham, yeah, cool. No, all good.
I mean, hopefully, at the end of the day, I hope at this point in the season, I hope it's a bit of an advert game, because I think both teams can play good football. I think both teams have got, if you like, a clean sheet for this season almost. You've got European football this season, so you're going to be the one clocking up the air miles this year, not us. But this is a chance early in the season to lay a couple of markers down, and I think if your new signings and our new signings can perform well, and there's one goal in the outcome, I think that's a result for football as well as the two teams.
There we go. Right, let's take some of your predictions then. Get them in. 2-2. Trent agrees with me. Great minds think alike, sir. 1-1.
Full seldom differ.
1-1 says Dad. Very hard to call 1-1 again, says Phil. So most West Ham fans currently back in a draw, which is interesting. That is for sure. Soft pen for Chelsea. Huge blooper, blooper by Ari. James Ward-Prowse subbed on and scores. Ends 3-1. Fabianski back in goal next week. Could you imagine? Arioli's finally been given this opportunity. He's sat on the bench in the Premier League for 2 years, and he comes on and does an absolute howler. Oh dear. Deary me. Right. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for watching. We will join you at some point on Sunday for some match day content. But until then, thank you very much. If we get any major developments on the Lucas Paqueta betting scandal, we will bring it to you. But until now, all we've got is there's an investigation going on. And until we get some more information, we are all in the dark and we're all guessing. That is for sure. Steve, give us some final thoughts for the game.
It's going to be more open than it's been in the last few years. There's going to be a reasonable number of mistakes. I'm not sure both sides are fully aware of who plays on which side yet, so there could be some really dodgy passing going on. And we should just trumpet 2-1.
Wow. Wow, that's questionable. But Steve, thank you very much for joining me and from me. We will see you very, very soon right here on West Ham Official. Thank you very much. Keep believing. Stay positive. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Night.